The night she fell into his arms, she wasn't supposed to survive it. Rain slashed through the city like broken glass, turning streets into rivers and shadows into something far more dangerous. People rushed past one another, heads down, unwilling to get involved, unwilling to notice. But in the middle of that storm, on a dimly lit sidewalk near a closed cafe, she stood trembling, soaked, exhausted, and barely holding herself together. Her hands shook, not just from the cold, but from something deeper, something that had been breaking her for years. And then, without warning, her knees gave out. She collapsed forward, straight into a stranger's arms. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, The Emotional Stories. Stories like this remind us that sometimes one small act can change everything. He hadn't been looking for trouble that night. In fact, he had just ended a long shift, his mind numb from routine, his heart carrying its own quiet scars. Life had taught him to stay distant, to avoid getting entangled in strangers' problems. But when she fell into him, something in his instincts refused to let go. He caught her just in time. Her body felt fragile, almost weightless, as if she had already given up fighting gravity itself. Her face was pale, her lips slightly parted, and her breathing shallow but steady. She wasn't unconscious, not fully, but she was slipping. For a brief moment, he hesitated. Not because he didn't care, but because he knew that stepping in meant responsibility. It meant involvement. It meant risking the fragile stability he had built for himself. But then she gripped his shirt, weakly, desperately, like someone clinging to the last thread of hope. And that was enough. He lifted her carefully, shielding her from the rain with his jacket, and carried her to his car. The storm roared louder, as if protesting his decision, but he didn't stop. Something about her silence spoke louder than any cry for help. During the drive, she stirred only once, whispering something he couldn't fully understand. It sounded like a name, or maybe a plea. Her voice carried pain so deep that it lingered in his chest long after she fell quiet again. He didn't take her to a hospital, not immediately. Instead, he brought her home. It wasn't a grand place, just a modest apartment filled with quiet corners and a life lived alone. The kind of place where time moved slowly and loneliness had become familiar. But that night, for the first time in a long while, it felt different. He laid her gently on his bed, covering her with a blanket. He made sure she was warm, checking her temperature, making sure her breathing steadied. Every action was careful, deliberate, almost as if he feared she might disappear if he wasn't gentle enough. Hours passed. The storm outside softened, but the tension inside him didn't. He sat in a chair nearby, watching over her, unsure of what the morning would bring. Because something about her presence had already begun to change him, and he didn't know why.
Morning came quietly, as if afraid to disturb whatever fragile peace had settled overnight. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, soft and golden, touching her face with a warmth that the storm had denied her. For the first time, she looked at peace. The tension in her expression had eased, her breathing slow and steady, her body no longer trembling. He had fallen asleep in the chair beside her, exhaustion finally catching up to him. And then, she woke up. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the unfamiliar surroundings. Confusion flickered across her face, followed by something deeper: fear, uncertainty, and a hint of disbelief. She sat up carefully, her gaze scanning the room as if trying to piece together fragments of memory. And then she saw him, still asleep, leaning slightly forward, as though even in rest, he hadn't let his guard down completely. For a long moment, she simply stared. There was something in her expression, something soft, almost fragile. It wasn't recognition in the usual sense. It was something more instinctive, more emotional. She slipped out of bed quietly, her movements cautious but steady. Standing there, watching him, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: safety. And before she could question it, before logic could interrupt the moment, the word left her lips: "Husband." The sound was soft, almost a whisper, but it carried a weight that neither of them understood yet. He woke instantly. His eyes met hers, confusion clear, his mind struggling to catch up with reality. The word echoed in his head, refusing to settle into anything logical. She didn't look embarrassed. She didn't laugh it off. Instead, she looked at him with a strange certainty, as if what she had said was the most natural thing in the world. And that was when he realized something was wrong. Not in a dangerous way, but in a way that hinted at something broken, something lost. As the hours passed, the truth began to reveal itself slowly. She couldn't remember everything. Fragments of her past were missing, blurred, scattered, incomplete. She knew who she was, but not entirely. She remembered feelings more than facts, pain more than details. And somehow, in that broken space of memory, she had placed him. Not as a stranger, but as someone she trusted completely. He should have corrected her immediately. He should have explained everything, drawn boundaries, restored clarity. But he didn't. Because every time she looked at him, there was something in her eyes that stopped him. Hope. The kind of hope that comes after surviving something terrible. Days turned into a quiet rhythm. He helped her piece together small parts of her life, simple routines, gentle conversations, careful steps toward understanding. He never lied to her outright, but he also didn't rush to break the illusion she had built. And in that fragile space between truth and comfort, something began to grow, a connection neither of them had planned. She laughed sometimes, softly at first, then more freely. She smiled in ways that made the apartment feel warmer, less empty. She brought life into spaces that had long been silent. And he began to change too. The walls he had built over the years started to crack. Because for the first time in a long time, he wasn't alone.
But healing is never simple, and the past doesn't disappear just because the present feels safe. One afternoon, everything changed. They had gone out together, something small, something normal, a walk through a quiet street, sunlight replacing the storm that had brought them together. It felt peaceful, almost like the beginning of something real, until a car screeched to a halt nearby. A man stepped out, his face filled with shock, anger, and something else. Recognition. He called her name, not the name she had been using, but another one. And just like that, the world tilted. Her body froze. Her expression shifted, confusion, fear, and then pain. Real pain. Memories didn't return all at once. They came in fragments, sharp, overwhelming flashes that broke through her fragile sense of peace. The truth wasn't gentle. She hadn't been lost. She had been running. Running from a life that had broken her, from a relationship that had drained her, from a version of herself she no longer recognized. The man standing before her wasn't a savior. He was the reason she had collapsed in the rain. The confrontation was intense, but what mattered most wasn't the past, it was her reaction. She stepped back, not toward the man who claimed her past, but toward the one who had given her a future. And in that moment, everything became clear. She looked at him, not as someone confused, not as someone lost, but as someone who had chosen. The word she had spoken that morning, husband, wasn't about memory. It was about trust. It was about the way he had held her when she was falling apart. The way he had stayed. The way he had cared without expecting anything in return. And suddenly, the illusion didn't matter anymore. Because the feeling was real. Tears filled her eyes as she took his hand, not out of confusion, but out of certainty. The past no longer had power over her. Not when she had found something worth holding on to. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. Healing took time. Trust took effort. And love, real love, required both of them to face their fears honestly. But they did, together. And that was enough. If this story touched your heart even a little, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who believes in love, healing, and second chances. Before the story ends, I have a special request for you.
Comment second chance if you believe people deserve a fresh start, no matter how broken their past may be. Because sometimes, the most unexpected moments lead to the most meaningful connections. And sometimes, falling into the arms of a stranger is exactly how you find home.